big news last night. Well, massive news last night that West Ham United have rejected a £350 million takeover bid from an American consortium for West Ham United. This was back in August, a month ago. Once we'd confirmed Premier League survival, once the season was finished, we were remaining in the Premier League. The bid came in for West Ham, which was rejected for £350 million. David Sullivan and David Gold do not wish to sell as yet, although they are looking to sell a portion of it. That's according to reports. There was lots of news breaking across media outlets and social media. I kept up to date with it last night. I was having a read here and a read there, seeing what was going on, what was being said. I woke up this morning and thought I'll do a little video on it. And if you're thinking, we can tell you've just woke up, you would be correct. It's just before 6 o'clock. I thought I'd get this done and head to work for the day. Share my thoughts, give you my conclusion. Because I think there's a lot of conflicting reports to start. But I think they may be jumping the gun. I don't think it's completely accurate. But I think when you take pieces from here and there and start putting it all together, and you can draw your own conclusions, as I have, I think there's something there. I think it's encouraging somewhat compared to what it was a week ago. I'm going to take it in order, actually. I was going to say I don't know where to start. I should plan this video a bit more, but it's early. Let me off. I'm going to take it from the start. We've known for ages there's interest. There's been lots of different reports. American people, Middle East people. We've been told that Sullivan Gold don't want to sell. The kids are going to have the club, but they might sell a little bit of it, and that's all they're going to sell. We've heard all this stuff. Let's discard that for a little while. A week ago, there was someone that went on Spencer Owen's stream. Spencer Owen's a big YouTuber. I think just calling him a YouTuber is a bit harsh, actually. He does loads of different stuff. He's been involved with West Ham before, doing presenting and whatnot. But he has 2 million subscribers on YouTube, just so you know how big he is. And on his stream, he had someone that was claiming to be a football agent that had information on the West Ham or the potential sale of West Ham. And he was claiming that West Ham United would have new owners by the end of the calendar year. Now, a lot of people poo-pooed this, a lot of people started to believe this, and so on and so forth. Myself, I actually avoided discussing this because I wasn't sure. The secret agent side of it, I don't believe. I don't believe the club was going to be sold by the end of the year. I don't really believe this agent thing. However, I've met Spencer Owen a couple of times. I think he's a really nice bloke. I think he's pretty straight, pretty genuine. And he doesn't need the extra attention. Spencer Owen does not need this whole extra viewership or this traction on social media. He's big enough without it. He's rich enough without it. I say rich enough. I don't know. I'm assuming he's got enough pennies in the bank given that what he's done for his work and stuff. He does not need this extra attention. So that made me sort of think there's something in this, because I would assume and expect Spencer to do his due diligence prior to letting this guy come on his show and essentially, potentially make this up. Bear in mind that the guy has said to Spencer, you know who I am and stuff, and Spencer's confirmed it. So I've left it because I wasn't really sure. So I haven't discussed it. And then yesterday came an interesting turning point for me almost. On TalkSport, Jim White, last week he was giving it this about the fan base, wasn't he? He was discarding our feelings, our emotions. And he's saying, get behind the team, get behind the manager, get behind the board. He didn't understand why we're kicking off. The season's starting. We should all be quiet, essentially. Very, very, very defensive of the board, as you'd expect. We know he's friends with David Sullivan. There's pictures of them together at the London Stadium. But yesterday, I detected a change. He very much is now... His wording was, before I came on air, I had a call from one of the owners, which will be David Sullivan, and he said they're not prepared to walk away yet, but everybody has their breaking point. I thought, hang on a minute, this is different. And it was quite significant, actually. I thought the protests are clearly working. We've clearly got to David Sullivan and David Gold now. They're now a bit upset by this. And they use the words hung out to dry, which, in my own opinion, is laughable. They're the last ones I can talk about hanging people out to dry. They're currently doing it to our manager. They've done it to every manager before him as well. So all this hanging out to dry stuff is just nonsense. But I felt it gave a little insight, actually, because we don't really hear anything from the board. But to hear that would suggest that A, we're getting to them, and B, that they're now looking at potentially selling the football club. So I thought that was quite significant. And then last night the reports came out. The Guardian and the Sun were reporting that there was a £350 million bid from an American consortium rejected. David Sullivan doesn't want to give up his controlling stake in West Ham, and the American consortium don't want anything less than a controlling stake. So they both want 51% of the club. We've got a bit of an issue here. And I think the truth is somewhat in the middle of that. I think Sullivan Gold are prepared to sell part of the club. That's never been a secret. They've always said if someone comes along with money, we'll listen. They sold 10% to Tripp 2 years ago now, roughly. But Tripp is not involved in this takeover bid. Albert Tripp Smith, that has 10% of West Ham United, he's not involved. So that's quite significant as well. I think it's different interest. But £350 million bid, I'm not sure I believe it. I think there's definitely interest, but I'm not sure I believe there was an official bid lodged. However, let's just take the rumours. The Las Vegas Raiders owners, if it is them, they want to purchase the club. Once the Premier League survival is done, they're looking to come in. There's a lot of talk about them trying to own more clubs in European football, and they're using West Ham as like an anchor club, if you like. Would make sense, I guess. I can understand the appeal. But is this where we get excited as West Ham fans? I think so. While I don't believe the bid, I do think there's now a change in the mindset of the owners. Rather than we shall not and will not sell, I think it's now a case of if you put the money on the table, we'll talk a little bit. And this is where it gets a bit interesting. 2023 has always been a magic date, hasn't it? That's the date that the clause in the contract expires, so that the owners no longer have to hand over some of the proceeds of the sale to the government because of the rental of the stadium. But how much is it worth? And I think the £350 million bid, or the phantom £350 million bid, in my opinion, would give us an insight into what West Ham is potentially realistically valued at. Cam Brady's got the stupid figure of 800 million on their website. We know that's not happening. West Ham are not worth 800 million. We know that. I think it's somewhere in the middle. Is what if it would be sold tomorrow? I'd imagine it'd be somewhere. I say in the middle. I think it'd be closer to 350 million than Cam Brady's stupid estimation of 800 million. But let's go with the 350. And the article suggested that the reason they've gone with that is because Newcastle was up for sale at 300 million. They value West Ham a little bit more due to the fact that they're a London club. However, they don't own their stadium, and that's why they've come to 350. And going by that figure, what would we have? Well, I say we. What would Sullivan Gold and the other owners of West Ham United have to hand over to the government? I think when you break it down, it is not that much, to be honest with you. Anything over 200 million, and in that price bracket, you would have to hand over 12.5% of the proceeds to the government. But there's caveats here, and that is that once the sale's gone through, for the final sale price, out of 350 million, you take out what is owed in loans. That comes out before you start talking about 12.5%. So David Sullivan and David Gold are currently owned £45 million from West Ham United. So that comes out the sale price. So now we're already down at just over 300 million. So they get their money back. It was due to be repaid on the 1st of January of this year, but they deferred it. I think it's a clever move. I don't think the money was there. I don't think they could have repaid it anyway. However, I think it was a good move if they knew this was on the horizon. If they were planning on selling the club, I can see why they would kick the can down the road and say, well, it's alright, we'll just add the extra £45 million on. I think this is where there could potentially be a bit of an issue with the asking price. I think the owners would be turning around and saying, well, hang on a minute, 350 million for the club's one thing, but we are due money out of that 350 million. Let's attach it to the 350 million so we get our money first and foremost. But anyway, 45 million to Sullivan Gold. There's 10 million owed to Tripp. Albert Smith, the American owner, owns 10% currently. He's put £10 million into the club, which is interest free, unlike Sullivan Gold's interest free. And he only gets repaid when there's a change of ownership at West Ham United, which was quite significant when he lent the money, because that would suggest that he's either planning something or he's aware of something. He could be waiting a long time for that money, but if there's a change of ownership, he gets his 10 million back. So now we're down to 295 million. You see where I'm going here. The 12.5% thing is getting a little bit shorter. There's a £30 million loan as well that we're due to pay. I assume that would come off as well, which then reduces it further. And it's only anything above 200 million. The first 200 million of the sale price is removed. That's safe, if you want to call it that. So that doesn't leave much, does it? That leaves £65 million for the deduction of the 12.5%. And that comes out at just over £8 million. It's not much. It is much. £8 million is a lot of money, isn't it? It's 99% of people in the world aren't going to see £8 million in their life. However, if you were selling something for £350, a television for example, and someone offered you £350 minus £8, so you got an offer of £342, would you take it? I think you would. I think you'd be very tempted anyway. So I wonder if maybe there is a little bit of temptation here. If they're willing to give up £8 million, Sullivan would have to give up just over £4 million of it, obviously, given his ownership of the club. David Gold would have to give up just over a third of that. So on and so forth. That's assuming my figures are correct, and I think they are, because I'm also using the figures that Sean Weston uses, and he's good at stuff like this. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to finance of West Ham. So that would be the penalty for £350 million, £8 million. I just don't think it's much. So is the owners looking to sell? I'm going to start wrapping this up, don't worry. Do I think the owners are looking to sell? I do. I think the end is near. I believe the end is near. I think they've always wanted, or always been willing to concede a stake in the club in order to get a cash injection. But I think it's gone beyond that now. I think the protests are getting to them, given that they used the phrase hung out to dry. Clearly, they're not overly happy with how the fans are looking at them. And I do think that they believe they're doing a good job. They're looking at West Ham saying, "Oh, a minute, you're a Premier League club. What more do you want?" I think they are probably a little bit resentful towards us at the minute, thinking that our expectations are too high. And there's only, if they were in their eyes too high, there's only two people to blame for our expectations being too high. That's themselves. They've only got themselves to blame for all this. And like I said, I do think the end is near. I think there is genuine interest in the purchase of the football club. I don't believe there's been a bid yet. However, Jacob Steinberg is a decent journalist when it comes to West Ham. He's pretty reliable. So when Steinberg's suggesting there's been a bid, I don't think you can dismiss it too much. However, like I said, I'm not convinced there has been one as yet. But I think there might be one on the horizon. I certainly think there's genuine interest. I think we're closer than ever to getting a bid for the club, closer than ever to the owners considering selling up. It's encouraging. It's almost exciting, isn't it? It's almost good news. Almost. Maybe one day soon. And I think there will be a one day soon anyway. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Let us know your thoughts. I will be reading the comments on my lunch while I start work. So if you put your comments in the video below, I shall have a little read of them. Be interesting to see what you guys take of this, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. Because there is a lot of conflicting reports going on at the minute. And maybe one of you even know who Las Vegas Raiders are. I certainly don't. Anyway, drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. It's scouting you around here. Tonight we'll be back. 6:30. 6:30 tonight we're back. We've got the League Cup game against Charlton. I'll see you then. Catch you in a bit.